there, quilting friends. It's Carolina Moore, your favorite sewing and quilting YouTuber, and we are doing month 2. That's the February block of the 4-patch block of the month. I'm so excited to get into this block. It is so easy. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 seams. 11 seams to get this whole block done super quick. Hopefully you've already cut out your pieces. If you need instructions for that, go down to the description, get all the details about how to get this pattern and how to join in on the block of the month. And we're gonna jump right in. You ready? Let's get started. So I have my smaller squares here, and I have 8 of them, and they all need a line on the back. Now I'm using a friction pen, which is fine. Friction pens are fine for the back of your fabric. You never want to use them on the front of your fabric because they won't ever disappear completely. They don't completely wash out. They actually go white with an iron, and they will go dark again in the freezer. But since it's on the back of our fabric, I'm totally fine using it. You can use whatever your favorite marking pen is. I often like the blue lines. The friction pen is a little sharper than a lot of those blue line pens, but in a pinch, a mechanical pencil, just a regular mechanical pencil from like a school bag, works just great. So we're drawing lines on the back of these. I'm just using a ruler and my pen. By the way, if you want to know more about marking tools, head to my marking tool video. I have a whole video that talks all about all different kinds of marking tools and marking pens. There we go. If you want, you could use a ruler like this. It's great for doing half square triangles, and I would just use the edge like this. I wouldn't use that middle because we're going to be stitching on this line, and I don't want a dotted line. Dotted line is fine for cutting. A solid line is better for stitching. If you want to know more about this little Creative Grids tool, here's another video that I have all about how to use probably the least expensive Creative Grids ruler out there. All right, so I have lines marked on all 8 of my pieces. I'm going to move my rulers and my pen out of the way because I'm done with those for now. And I'm going to grab my big squares. Now I'm going to be doing what's called snowballing the corners, where you take one of your big squares and one of your little squares and you stitch on that line and then flip it over. And that snowballing the corners comes from, if you did small corners on all 4 sides of a square, it's a snowball quilt block. It's also known as the stitch and flip method. Now I'm going to open up my sewing machine here, and I'm going to swap out my presser foot. I don't want that 1/4 inch foot with guide for this because that guide is going to get in the way of being able to stitch. And this isn't about doing a 1/4 inch. I'm just stitching on the line. So I'm going to take this over to my machine. And sometimes you'll want a pin there, depending on how experienced of a quilter you are. And we're just going to stitch all the way down. I'm going to do this 4 times. So on all 4 blocks. If you don't like drawing lines, there is something out there called diagonal seam tape, and it is magical. If you have a longer throat space, which I don't have a long enough throat space for doing that on these blocks, but if I had like an extension table, which I haven't gotten for this machine, maybe I should, but if you had an extension table, you could use the diagonal seam tape on your machine, and then you wouldn't have to draw the lines at all. If you want to know more about diagonal seam tape, there's a video on that as well. I have lots of videos on different things. I love sharing different notions. So if you don't have time to go check all those out right now, There are links down in the description as well for all of these videos, so that you can go check those out later. Okay, so I've done 4 of these, and I'm just going to use my little seam ripper or seam cutter, I don't know, chain stitch ripper, I'm sure it has a name, to just split these apart. So I have my 4 corners stitched on. I'm going to set my other 4 small squares aside, and I'm going to grab this ruler back again. You can do this with scissors. It's going to be more accurate with a rotary cutter and a ruler. Now, this is the seam allowance, and so it doesn't have to be perfectly accurate, but I also think it's quicker with a rotary cutter and ruler. So all we're doing is we're cutting ourselves a 1/4 inch seam allowance. If it's not perfect, that's okay in this case, because normally we cut our blocks to size, including the seam allowance. So we need that seam allowance to be perfect so that our block will be perfect. But in this case, we stitched on the line, so it doesn't matter as much if our seam allowance is perfect, because we're not using it to measure where our seam needs to go. Our seam allowance in this case is just, it's there to keep our quilt together. So it's still important, but if it's a couple threads off, it's not a big deal. Okay, these are extra pieces of fabric. You can use these for a scrap quilt, so enjoy. And I'm gonna go ahead and press these so they're out of the way when we do our other side. Okay, so now we're just going to repeat the same process on the other side of this quilt, or on the other side of these blocks. We're going to take our other 4 squares, just line them up and sew. Okay, we have our other sides stitched on. So now all we need to do is cut off our extra. I'm going to flip this and press again. February is a short month, so it totally makes sense to have a quick, short, easy block for our February block, right? Now I'm going to lay this out. This block makes an X, but what's super cool is if you make a lot of these blocks, you'll get like a lattice look, which is a really fun quilt to make. You can make your background blocks all the same and then swap out your triangles for an interesting lattice look, or you can have your backgrounds all different and have your foreground triangles all the same, or do like a all lights, all darks. There's so many ways that you can change this up to make a really fun lattice quilt using these blocks. And like you saw, these blocks come together so fast. Okay, so we're stitching our 2 rows together, and then let's make that make sense. We're gonna stitch our row 1 and stitch our row 2, and then we'll stitch our rows together. And then our block will be finished. I promised you this was a fast one, right? Okay. Oh, let me switch my presser foot back to this 1/4 inch foot here. There we go. Much better. And now I can stitch them together. We have our 2 rows. We're going to press them, and we want to press them in opposite directions, which is kind of a funky term in quilting. So when I put them on the cutting mat or the pressing mat like this, and they're both kind of like, they're both these chevrons, I'm actually pressing them in what looks like the same direction. But since one is going right side up and the other is going upside down, this seam was pressed in that direction and this seam was pressed in that direction. And so when I put them together, I can nest that center seam. So I'm going to sew the 2 rows together. And then if you joined in last month, we talked about spinning seams. We're going to do that again. This seam's going this way, this seam's going this way. So we're going to spin our seams around, and that's going to pop open this center so you don't have too much bulk in your center, which, if you're going to quilt this yourself, you will love not having all that bulk in the middle. And if you send this to a long armor, they're going to love not having all that bulk in the middle, because it can really get in the way of quilting the quilt if you have a big lump in the middle of the block. Put this right side up. Let's see how we did on all those seams. My points all look pretty good. There's one that's not quite perfect. That's okay. I'm gonna leave it alone. It'll be fine. But there we go. That is our February block all done. Month 2 of our 4-patch block of the month. If you enjoyed this video, I hope that you will give it a thumbs up. If you have any questions or comments, leave those down below. Make sure you check the description for all those great links, and make sure you're subscribed to this channel. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on any of these fun quilting videos. Thanks so much. Thank you so much for watching, my friends. I will see you right here real soon. Bye for now.